I grew up on the farm, and I was born in the mid-30s, and that gave me a chance to observe farming before the Second World War. And before the Second World War, the agricultural department in Wayne County had just sort of started helping farmers improve their farming conditions with doing crop rotations, cover crops in the winter, and helping them with the seeds they would buy and those kinds of things. The war came on, and that changed everything for our family and also for the whole farming in eastern North Carolina with the Second World War. One is that the young men that were helping farm were leaving and had gone into service, so we did not have the help. The other problem was before the Second World War, most of the farming was done in eastern North Carolina with livestock, mules and horses, and it took more time to farm the area. And during the war, you could not buy any new equipment. It was just impossible to buy any kind of equipment. But it also gave them an opportunity to plant some cover crops in the winter and do a different type of farming from what they had been doing before. So that was how the war affected farmers in eastern North Carolina. And this was true of most of the farms that they did not have help to farm. And then when the war was over, a year or two after the war was over, you were able to buy a tractor. I remember it was the agriculture department, the extension agencies, and they were, at that time for eastern North Carolina, they were graduates of NC State, and they were trained to help farmers, and they knew about the types of seeds, and up until about that time, the farmer saved some of his corn seed and replanted those same corn seed. It was during this time that they realized they could buy a better grade of corn seed, and that was just one. And then also the type of fertilizer that used, and also rotating the crops became a big problem, or big advantage really, to the farmer, because they learned to do it, and then the farmer learned to plant a cover crop. And I remember the first time we planted a cover crop on the farm, some of the neighbors thought, what in the world are you doing putting seed out in the fall for the winter to come along? And it was a clover type of cover crop. And the farmers would come by the next year, and they could see where the clover had been, and they'd see right next to it there was no clover planted there, and the corn was better in that time. And we planted cotton. We had cotton, tobacco. We didn't have a lot of soybeans then, but we had cotton, tobacco, and corn. And then that was the basic three crops that we had during those times. And we stopped planting cotton because it was so hard to get people to pick the cotton. Now they have a machine to do it, and it's a completely different story. The way I got the high tunnel is that when I was in the office, one day, one of the guys that I had made a friendship with said, Lem, said, you know, you ought to apply for one of these high tunnels. And I said, well, you think I have any chance of getting it? He said, yes, you have a chance to get it. And so he did help me with the paperwork. We did the paperwork, and I got the high tunnel. So if he hadn't have been a person that was interested and happy with what we were doing, or had the possibility of doing, I'd have never gotten the high tunnel, because you had to apply to get it and state how you would use it and why you needed it, and then go from there. They paid for about 3/4 of cost to install it. They paid around $8,000, and I think I paid $3,000 to get a high tunnel. And I think that has great possibilities for eastern North Carolina. I had a lady that wanted to come and rent it and grow flowers in it. They were very interested in growing flowers. There's just a lot of help if you know who to go ask for it. I think that's the real secret. It's great to see that. And the nice thing about that organization, is that they've got persons who have been farmers themselves, and they can understand what the farmer is going through as far as hard times and getting money and those things. One of the first things you need to do is to go down to your local agricultural office there. And in Goldsboro, it's right on Wayne Memorial Drive. They have a nice office. They have 4 or 5 people in the office to help you. And just make a contact and tell them what you want to do and ask them for their help and any suggestions that they would have to make it possible to do what you're trying to do. And I think they'd be surprised how much they want to help you. There's a lot of tax advantages that they give when you use their programs. For instance, I can't tell you exactly how much, but the county tax on the farm is probably $500 or $600 less because I have been involved with the county farm office and the forestry service. So, for instance, somebody wanted to buy the timber on the farm just this spring. I called the farm office and asked them to go over the forest and give me a suggestion. They called me back up and said, you need to wait 10 years before you do anything with selling it. And that was really help because it was not ready to cut, and they had suggestions of what needed to be done. And they said, will you give us permission for us to use that forest to train other staff members from even other counties that need to get trained on what they need to look for and those kinds. So it's a cooperative effort between the farmer and the university or the office there.